Imagine awakening as an S rank, but being treated like trash and called a liar just because your powers don't work. This guy was humiliated and beat up by a school bully, all because his trap master class seemed completely useless. But the tables have turned. The entire world just transformed into a gigantic dungeon. Now, Earth is his playground, and everyone who laughed at this S rank is about to find out the hard way who's really in charge. The story starts with a TV news show called Hunters Now, which is all about hunters. On the show, the host introduces the special guest of the evening, the famous A-rank hunter Yugo Ibuki. She then congratulates him on his recent success in a dungeon and asks him to share his thoughts on the win. As our protagonist watches from home, the hunter replies that his fire mage class gave him a huge advantage. Watching this, our 23-year-old protagonist, Tsukasa Ninomiya, thinks about what it means to be an E-rank. He thinks about how high-level classes are in a league of their own, and how everyone looks at that man with so much respect. In his dark room, the young man wonders why that couldn't be him receiving all that recognition. Just then, his status screen appears, revealing that Tsukasa Ninomiya is an S-rank trap master, but he's only at level 1. This frustrates him because he's also an S rank, so he doesn't get why his life is so different. The story then shifts to the past, explaining that the world now revolves around mysterious portals called dungeons. These portals started appearing everywhere, and beyond them lay a completely unknown territory. Inside each dungeon were countless traps and fierce monsters that blocked anyone's path. However, these places also held treasures that brought unimaginable riches to those who found them. Around the same time the portals appeared, certain people began to awaken their own classes and powers. They gained enhanced physical abilities and powerful skills to face the dangers of the dungeons. These people who ventured in the portals and brought back valuable items became known as hunters, and so began a new era based on a dungeon economy, where merit and strength were all that mattered. It didn't matter if you were a failure like the protagonist, or if you didn't even finish school, you still had a chance. Our young man believed that if he could awaken a high-level class, his life would change forever. And to his surprise, the class he awakened was Trap Master, an S-rank class. His skill description said he could bring the traps of a dungeon under his control. In a place filled with lethal traps, having control over them was the same as controlling the dungeon itself. Tsukasa was thrilled when he awakened this overpowered class, and that was the best day of his life. Or at least, that's what the young man thought until he discovered the harsh reality of his new ability. It all happened 2 years ago, when our protagonist was trying to get his hunter's license. During the test, the examiner told him to use his skill and that there would be no penalty. With great confidence, the young man extends his hand and shouts trap activation to show off his power. However, to everyone's surprise, absolutely nothing happens, and the audience just stares, confused. Tsukasa panics, wondering why his skill isn't activating at all. Seeing the situation, the examiner approaches the young man and asks if there's something wrong with him. Our desperate young man asks the examiner for one more chance, while trying to activate the skill again. But he turns to the crowd and yells at them as they all look at him with scorn and suspicion. The man with glasses becomes visibly annoyed by the boy's attitude and stares at him with a serious expression. Tsukasa can't believe what's happening and thinks it must all be some kind of joke. The audience and the examiner continue to look at him with disdain, as if he were some kind of weirdo. Then the man asks what he's trying to do, and the young man explains that his skill activates traps against enemies. At that moment, the skill's description appears, showing that it only works on traps inside a dungeon. With that, the protagonist finally understands why his skill didn't work during the test. The examiner, however, doesn't seem to care about the explanation and keeps his indifferent expression. He says that from time to time, scammers or lunatics show up who can't tell the difference between delusion and reality. Tsukasa insists that he really is an S rank and points to his status window, trying to prove he's telling the truth. But the man with glasses explains that unfortunately no one but him can see that information screen. As a last resort, the young man asks to be tested inside a dungeon so he can prove his power. However, the examiner denies the request, saying that dungeons are dangerous and this exam is meant to prove his strength. Desperate, the protagonist is left not knowing what to do, as his options to become a hunter have run out. The man then suggests he look for another job, since being a hunter isn't the only profession in the world. And that's how Tsukasa's dream of becoming a hunter was completely shattered that day. Time passes, and the job he managed to get was at the Hunter Association building as an assistant. He works in the training hall, helping other hunters prepare for dungeons. During a training session, our young man gets hit hard in the face while serving as a sparring partner for a hunter. The aggressor, a blonde guy, smirks wickedly as he sees the protagonist fall to the ground after the blow. He grabs him and tells him to do his job right, treating him with total contempt and roughness. Then he calls him a punching bag for the hunters as he attacks him again, even harder. Tsukasa is thrown a great distance by the impact of the blow, with no way to defend himself from the attack. He thinks that even though he failed the exam, his enthusiasm was enough to get him a job as an assistant. The bully approaches him and says he still remembers that day like it was yesterday. He makes fun of his old school victim, the guy who lied about being an S rank at the testing site. It's revealed that this guy named Asanuma was his bully in school and uses the training to take out his frustrations. In his thoughts, the protagonist affirms to himself that he really is a powerful S rank. Somehow, Asanuma hears his thoughts and stares at him, confused, asking what he just said. Seeing this, the bully gets angry and kicks the protagonist hard, telling him to give up already. He then taunts the young man, saying that if he were really an S rank, he wouldn't be taking a beating from him like that. Suddenly, the bully changes the subject and starts talking about the promise they made about the escort permit. With a bruised face, Tsukasa reminds him that he promised to sponsor him if he endured all that training. With contempt, Asanuma calls him a persistent rat as he walks away with an air of superiority. At that moment, the bully's gaze reveals a glint of pure malice and scorn for our young protagonist. But our young man doesn't let it get to him and stares back with unwavering determination in his eyes. Seeing how desperate Tsukasa was, the bully finally agrees to his request and accepts the deal. With a malicious smile on his face, he says they'll do one last test to see if he's truly worthy. They leave the hall because, according to Asanuma, many high-level hunters would be watching them in there. He then says the final test is very simple and asks our young man to look at what he's holding. The aggressor shows the already signed permit and says that if Tsukasa can grab it, he'll pass the test. The protagonist feels a glimmer of hope, but the bully warns him that there's a small condition. Suddenly, two other guys appear, and the condition is that the young man has to survive their attacks. Tsukasa recognizes them as the same guys who used to intimidate him in school, and yet he accepts the challenge. He braces himself for the confrontation, thinking he has to do this if he wants to enter a real dungeon. Without wasting any time, the three of them start roughing up the young man mercilessly, shouting for him to just give up. Asanuma calls him a cockroach for his resilience and asks why he wants to go to a dungeon so badly. He holds the permit in front of Tsukasa while displaying a smile of pure satisfaction and cruelty. With a dark look, he reveals that the more our young man begs, the less he feels like letting him go. The protagonist's eyes fill with despair as he realizes the true nature of his former classmate. He then rips up the paper, saying it's annoying to see trash like him of hope, and calls himself a genius. Seeing his only chance destroyed, the young man grinds his teeth in pure anger and frustration. In a final act of desperation, he reaches out his hand toward his aggressor, trying to stop him. But Asanuma easily catches his hand with a firm grip and a look of total superiority. Suddenly, glowing dagger appears, and he uses the swift strike skill on Tsukasa's hand. The other bullies are impressed by the skill and comment on how amazing hunters are. With a victorious air, he says the test is over and that the protagonist has failed once again. The young man looks at the dagger embedded in his hand and mutters under his breath, feeling the pain and humiliation. The dagger begins to dissolve into particles of light as he thinks that he always knew Asanuma was lying. As he walks away, the narration explains how the escort permit system works in the city. Basically, the sponsor is responsible for everything, so no one would risk sponsoring just any civilian. Deep down, our young man already knew that his former bully would never hold up his end of the bargain. But the young man was so desperate that he had to cling to any glimmer of hope that came along. He felt completely defeated and lost, as that was his only chance to change his life. The protagonist believed that if he could just get into a dungeon, his miserable life would finally change for the better. And it was exactly this belief that kept him going and pushed him to keep trying, even after failing. Suddenly, a huge red bolt of lightning tears through the city skies, surprising everyone nearby. One of the civilians passing by looks up, startled by the strange phenomenon that was happening. He is completely frozen in fear, not understanding what that red energy in the sky was. Beside him, another man desperately shouts for everyone to watch out for what was coming. The building next to them starts to crumble and everyone panics, trying to flee the area. Suddenly, a giant red eye appears amidst all the destruction, watching everything from above. Soon after, a huge sphere of red energy forms in the sky, threatening to destroy everything around it. In the middle of the confusion, one man helps another to his feet, saying they barely avoided being hit. At that moment, the city's screens turn on by themselves, showing an emergency broadcast for all civilians. The reporter announces that dungeon breaks are happening worldwide, and that the planet is being dungeonized. Meanwhile, a beam of energy destroys another building, causing panic and despair throughout the city. People are terrified by the scene, not knowing what to do to protect themselves from the chaos. Amidst the smoke, a giant dragon-like monster emerges from the rubble, roaring at everyone. The monster flies through the city skies, and people cower in fear, expecting the worst. Everyone looks up at the sky, horrified by the appearance of that terrifying creature flying over the city. Tsukasa watches everything and realizes the entire world has turned into one big dungeon, which is very bad. But then he remembers his Trapmaster ability, which only works inside these places. With a mischievous smile, he wonders if he can now finally use his S-rank skills. If the world has become a dungeon, it means he can control all the traps around him. His eyes begin to glow an intense blue as he is finally able to see the traps. With his enhanced vision, he can see a map of the city showing the location of every single trap. He is overjoyed to realize that his power wasn't fake, and that he can finally become a hunter. The narration explains that hidden traps are meant to torment hunters who try to clear dungeons. For him, however, it's different, because with his S-rank power, he can pinpoint the exact location of every trap. And as long as he knows their location, our young man can use his power to control them to his advantage. With this new perception, the young man feels more confident than ever to face the dangers to come. But his attention is diverted when he sees an armored monster chasing after people who are trying to escape. Without hesitation, a brave civilian picks up a metal pipe from the ground to try and face the creature. Tsukasa believes that with the power of a trap master, he can finally defeat that monster. In the background, a mother and her son run desperately as the creature gets closer and closer to them. During the escape, the little boy ends up tripping and falling to the ground, getting left behind by his mother. He screams for his mom, and she turns around in a panic, calling out her son's name, Takaru. The monster approaches the defenseless boy, ready to strike him without any mercy or hesitation. With a wicked smile, the creature raises its enormous sword, preparing for the final blow against the boy. In a swift and brutal move, the blade descends toward little Takaru, who is frozen in fear. But at the last second, our protagonist appears and blocks the attack with the metal pipe, saving the boy. He faces the creature with a defiant look and shouts for it to bring it on. With a confident smile, the young man announces that the trap to defeat it is already right there, ready to be used. The monster attacks again, but Tsukasa dodges with agility, moving out of the sword's reach. He throws himself to the side with a calculated leap to lure the creature to the exact spot he planned. As he lands, the metal pipe he was using touches the ground and activates a hidden mechanism in the pavement. The creature turns around, confused, while our young man watches it from a distance with the air of someone who has already won the fight. The monster looks down and realizes it has fallen exactly where the protagonist wanted it to be. With a victorious smile, the young man shouts for the creature to walk right into the trap he prepared. A blue magic circle appears under the monster's feet, revealing the trap that was hidden there. The trap is activated, and a sharp blade begins to materialize, ready to slice its target. The blue energy dissipates, revealing a giant pendulum with an axe at its tip, aimed at the creature. The trap's description appears, explaining that it's an iron axe pendulum that strikes prey in the field. The pendulum swings with force, striking the monster and causing it to break apart in front of him. He looks at the scene with determination and states that this is his way of defeating monsters with traps. The mother and son hug each other, relieved to be safe, while Tsukasa watches them from a distance. With a gentle smile, our young man is happy that he managed to save them and that his power worked. He then reflects on the danger of that monster, remembering that not even mid-level hunters would face it alone. Even with the victory, he realizes the situation is still very dangerous and he needs to act quickly to protect everyone. Looking at the family embracing, he knows that more dangers could arise at any moment in the destroyed city. Seeing the mother running with her son in her arms, the young man feels the responsibility to ensure their safety. But soon, a group of armored creatures appears out of nowhere and faces him with a clear intent to attack. Realizing he has no time to lose, the young man decides to use another skill to deal with all of them at once. With that, he raises his hand to the sky and shouts, "Trap activation," releasing a large amount of blue energy. Magic circles appear around the monsters, activating all the traps that were hidden nearby. A large-scale trap is triggered, and enormous rocks begin to fall from the buildings toward the creatures. The armored monsters are hit head-on by the blue energy spheres from the trap he activated. The forced activation is a success, and in exchange for mana, he can trigger traps without needing to touch them directly. With that, a shower of boulders completely crushes the prey, and the monsters are defeated instantly. After defeating all the enemies, Tsukasa levels up, and his activation skill also evolves to level 2. He realizes that he'll soon learn new skills, and that he can finally become a strong and respected hunter. The civilians are shocked by the avalanche of rocks, and one of them asks if our young man was responsible for it. Desperate, the man asks for help, saying he must be a high-level hunter, and asks where they should run. He explains that he's not an official hunter, but that everyone's priority now is to find a safe area. A safe zone is a place that always exists inside dungeons and has no dangers of any kind. The problem is that finding one of these areas requires a huge investigation team to explore the location. The civilian panics, but our young man says it's no problem, because for him, this is a very simple task. He then places his glowing hand on the ground, preparing to use one of his special S-rank skills. The protagonist uses the trap scan skill to analyze the entire area around him in search of safety. With his power to detect traps, he can easily find a place where there are none nearby. After scanning the area, he says the safe zone is at Higashikawa Park and asks everyone to follow him. With a confident smile, he says he will lead them there if they are willing to trust his ability. With no other option, everyone agrees to follow him and starts running toward the light of safety he promised. And to everyone's surprise, they finally arrive at Higashikawa Park completely safe and sound. The civilians celebrate, relieved to be in a safe place and that there are no monsters nearby. Takeru's mother approaches the young man and thanks him from the bottom of her heart for saving everyone's lives. But suddenly, Tsukasa realizes something is wrong, and his expression changes to one of complete alert and concern. Without a second thought, our hero starts running at high speed, holding some kind of red item in his hand. Our young man runs with a confident smile and tells himself that he now possesses the ultimate eyes. He refers to his ability as the eyes of a god, because if a place without traps is safe, then the opposite is also true. This means that a place protected by many traps must be hiding something very important and valuable. With a little luck, the young man believes it could be a very powerful hidden item waiting for him. Determined, he stops in front of a destroyed building, thinking about what he'll do if he manages to get this item. But a familiar voice interrupts him, saying he was wondering what kind of weakling was running around over there. Suddenly, his old bully appears, blocking his path with a look of total superiority. He then recognizes him and calls him Ninomiya the S-rank liar in a purely mocking tone. Tsukasa is completely shocked to see his old schoolmate right there in front of him. Asanuma stares at him with a malicious smile, and our young man can't believe what he's seeing. The protagonist is speechless, wondering why on earth his bully would be in that place. The bully then asks if Tsukasa is like him, and if he was also running from the dangers of the city. He wants to know if the young man also avoided all the annoying monsters and ended up in the same spot. With a mysterious air, Asanuma says that there really are no monsters around there, but instead, there's something else. He reveals himself as the violent hume of the area and lunges at Tsukasa with a wicked smile. The reflection in our young man's eye shows the imminent attack from his old and hated bully. With a swift and brutal blow, he strikes the protagonist without giving him any chance to defend himself. Tsukasa tries to argue, saying it's an emergency, but the bully replies that he doesn't care about that. The young man gets angry, realizing his enemy won't stop for anything since the world is already in chaos. To Asanuma, this new world is a place where the strong survive, and he can do whatever he wants. With a crazed look, he wonders if his level goes up by taking people out and says he's going to try it. Tsukasa realizes his opponent has lost it and notices that his movements to dodge the traps are strange. The bully notices that he's noticed and ironically praises him for picking up on his precise dodges. With a mocking smile, he says he'll tell the loser a secret about his brilliant moves. He then shows a device similar to a walkie-talkie, saying it's all thanks to that item. Our hero recognizes the object as a trap finder, which detects everything in the vicinity. Tsukasa knows that it's a high-precision version, a luxury item that low-level hunters wouldn't have. The bully explains that he got the item by looting a hunter equipment store during all the chaos. With the finder in hand, he feels invincible because he has already mapped every trap in that space. Seeing this, our young man decides to use his forced activation skill to catch his enemy by surprise. The protagonist focuses on the offensive trap that is right above his old bully's head. Without wasting time, he shouts trap activation, and a large magic circle appears on the spot. Seeing that, Asanuma looks up in surprise as several objects begin to fall toward him. A shower of iron hits him head-on, and the trap's description appears as steel burst. With a final kick, our young man sends his enemy flying, seemingly having won the fight. With a satisfied smile on his face, the young man thinks to himself that he finally managed to defeat him. However, strange sparks start coming from Asunuma's body, who is still lying on the ground. Suddenly, the protagonist's eyes widen in astonishment as he realizes something isn't right. The bully gets up with a pink energy surrounding him and questions what that pathetic trap was. He then remembers that Tsukasa was bragging about having a skill to activate traps and glares at him. Our young man is shocked to see a spark on his enemy's back and wonders if he has an invisible guard. This is a defense device that creates a special barrier around the hunter to protect them from harm. With a mocking smile, the bully taunts him, asking if he hadn't guessed what it was. He shows the protective item and says he also looted it from the same equipment store during the chaos. With the trap finder and the invisible guard, he believes he can join the high-level hunters. He brags, saying he's on a completely different level from a failed hunter like Tsukasa. And to prove his point, he lands a powerful punch to the protagonist's stomach with all his might. Our young man is thrown backward by the impact of the blow, falling to the ground unable to react. The aggressor calls him trash and asks if he attacked him from behind to get revenge for his past issues. He then remembers the training and says he always taught him to strike the stomach first to immobilize. Thus, he continues to rough him up mercilessly to make him crawl on the ground like some worm. With a look of pure madness, he raises his weapon and prepares to land the final blow on his former victim. He shouts that this is where his legend begins while displaying the smile of a complete psychopath. But Tsukasa manages to block the attack at the last second, surprising his aggressor with his resilience. The bully complains that the Hunter Association always sent him to low-level dungeons because he was a D rank. He yells that his power is much greater and that he just needs one chance in a high-level dungeon to prove his worth. Seeing the situation, the protagonist realizes that at this rate, he'll be taken out and needs to do something fast. At that moment, his hand begins to glow with an intense blue energy, preparing for a new attack. He points at his enemy and tries to use his trap activation skill one more time to save himself. A ball of spikes appears, but the bully just laughs, mocking his opponent's pathetic attempt. With his sword, he destroys the trap easily while bragging about his newly acquired power. He says he'll keep getting stronger by taking items from high-level dungeons to get his revenge. Seeing this, our young man doesn't give up and activates another trap to try and stop him again. But the bully dodges everything with ease and swears he'll take down everyone who humiliated him in the past. Tsukasa realizes it's useless because the bully is reading his attacks with the trap finder. Besides, he thinks that even if the attacks hit him, it wouldn't make a difference because of the protection. With the enemy having the invisible guard, the protagonist feels completely out of options to win. Suddenly, he hears the sound of a status change, and his information screen appears in front of him. The screen informs him that his proficiency has increased for exceeding the activation count, and he has gained a skill. He understands that because he used his skills several times, his proficiency increased without him noticing. Then, his new skill called Trap Creation is revealed, and it can generate new traps. With the power to generate new traps, the young man realizes he might have a chance to win the fight. Meanwhile, the bully calls him trash and approaches to continue the attack, unaware of anything. He finds our young man's pose strange and asks what he's trying to do with that stance. The protagonist remembers the theory of starting with a punch to the stomach as his hand glows with energy. With a look of pure fury, he says he's going to pay his enemy back with all the power he has. He then begins to generate and activate a trap with his own unknown and surprising power. With all his might, the young man shouts the name of his new skill, Trap Creation. Instantly, a trap emerges from the ground right under his unsuspecting opponent's feet. The bully is shocked and wonders why there's a trap there, saying it's impossible. His item didn't detect anything, and the description for Log's strike appears as he's hit. He's thrown a great distance by the Log's impact, with no time to defend himself from the surprise attack. With a victorious and wicked smile, our young man celebrates the success of his improvised plan. He admires his new creation skill, as he managed to generate a trap where there was absolutely nothing. The young man believes he can win if he uses this technique again and already prepares to activate another trap. The bully becomes desperate and shouts that it's all a lie because a weakling like him couldn't do that. Tsukasa says he's different from him because he has the S-rank job of Trap Master. And that's why he can do it, as a sphere of purple energy appears in his hand. He then uses his creation skill once more to finish the fight once and for all. With that, the bully is caught head-on by the new trap, being completely defeated by our hero. The new trap created is a sink that falls from the sky right on his old bully's head. With that, the bully is left completely confused, wondering what on earth that object was. Our protagonist seems disappointed because, with his current power, that was the best trap he could create. He thinks he needs much more magic power to generate large-scale, instant defeat traps. Seeing this, the bully starts to laugh and asks if that piece of junk trap is his opponent's limit. Tsukasa then reveals that his goal wasn't to hit him with the sink and tells him to look down. The bully looks at the ground, confused, not understanding what our young man was planning to do. Suddenly, a red magic circle appears right under his hand, surprising the aggressor. At that moment, he understands that there was a trap there from the beginning and that he fell for a setup. He realizes the sink was just a distraction to guide him to Tsukasa's real trap. With that, the bully goes into a total panic as a new trap is activated right where he is. The trap called Running Saw emerges from the ground, ready to slice its slow prey. The saw hits him head-on, and the bully screams in pain as he's caught off guard by the attack. He is visibly injured by the blow but still manages to stay on his feet despite the pain. In an act of desperation, the bully tries to move away from the trap to avoid being hit again. But he is thrown a great distance by the force of the saw, falling to the ground completely defenseless. Immediately after, another trap is activated behind him, and the bully screams in terror once more. A wall of needles appears out of nowhere and hits him hard, piercing his entire body. With that, the bully feels immense pain as the energy of his invisible guard begins to fail. He turns around and realizes that our young man has activated yet another trap to finish him off for good. The bully panics because at this rate, his invisible guard will break and he'll be left vulnerable. With his face full of despair, he realizes he's completely cornered with no way out. He tries to escape, but to his bad luck, there is also a trap waiting for him in that direction. An electric fence appears in the air and zaps him with a powerful discharge of blue energy. The shock is so strong that his legs give out and he falls to his knees on the ground, powerless. He knows he's at his limit and that if he takes one more hit, his protection will break completely. Exhausted and weak, he ends up falling right on top of another trap circle on the ground. Suddenly, a chain with sharp spikes emerges from the magic circle, ready to bind its victim. The unbreakable chain trap binds him tightly, sealing all his movements and resistance. Tsukasa then approaches and asks if he didn't realize he was surrounded from the start of the fight. With a victorious smile, our young man reveals that his enemy was inside a trap combo. This mechanism starts with one trap and activates others in sequence to defeat resilient intruders. He explains that the unbreakable chain holding the bully is the grand finale of this deadly combo. Immediately after, a hunting ballista appears from the ceiling, aiming directly at the defenseless bully. Desperate, the bully pleads for his life, screaming that he doesn't want it to end like this. The trap's description appears as a thirsty beast that traps and hunts its prey without mercy. The bolt is fired, and he realizes his guard won't hold and that he'll be pierced. The bully closes his eyes, waiting for the end, as the bolt approaches for the final blow. The invisible guard shatters on impact, and the bolt grazes past him, throwing him to the side. He falls to the ground along with the items he had stolen, completely defeated and humiliated. Our young man says the bolt missed, but there's no need to finish him off since he's already done for. The guard generator broke because it couldn't withstand so many hits from instant defeat traps. Tsukasa then approaches and steps on the trap finder to destroy it once and for all. He says the bully lost because he wasted the item's power and didn't notice the trap combo. After the battle, a light begins to shine through a crack in a nearby wall. The protagonist then remembers that all those traps were there to protect something. He approaches the light and realizes it's exactly what he was looking for all along. Peeking through the crack, he finally finds what was hidden behind the wall and smiles. Inside, he finds a hidden class treasure chest, an ultra-rare and very valuable item. These hidden items are very difficult to find, and few hunters manage such a feat. Because of this, they all have an inestimable value and can transform the power of whoever possesses them. Upon opening the chest, an intense light envelopes our young man, and he feels his body change completely. Blue energy flows through him as he levitates in the air, feeling immense power coursing through his body. He realizes his mana status is skyrocketing and that this item grants a huge power boost. Until that moment, he had been limited by his lack of mana and couldn't create lethal traps. But now he holds the Archmage's Orb, an item that significantly increases his total mana. With so much mana, he can finally generate powerful traps and decides to test his new power. Suddenly, a swarm of giant insect-type monsters appears right in front of him. With their eyes glowing blue, the creatures seem ready to attack without any hesitation. Our young man faces them with confidence and says they'll serve as a good warm-up for him. With a shout of trap creation, our young man extends his hand and releases an intense purple energy. Several firearms emerge from magic circles and fire at the giant insects without mercy. With that, a trap called Hell Burner incinerates all the monsters with overwhelming firepower. He is satisfied to see that the lethal trap manifested without any problems and admires the orb's power. Suddenly, two mysterious figures appear amidst the flames, and our hero notices their presence. The men look at the monster's carcass, shocked, and comment that it was burned to a crisp. They wonder if there's an S-rank hunter nearby to have managed such a feat. Tsukasa recognizes them as the Hunter Association's defense force and deduces they came to evacuate the residence. One of the agents tells him to leave everything behind and go to the baseball stadium, as the evacuation is already over. He explains that the main force has found the area boss and that the plan is to attack it with everything they've got. The protagonist is surprised to learn that the area boss has already been found so quickly by them. The narration explains that the area boss is the strongest monster in the dungeon and the hunter's top priority target. By defeating it, all other monsters in the vicinity disappear, turning the location into a safe zone. Our young man believes this rule should still apply even though the area suddenly turned into a dungeon. The agents run towards the stadium, saying the battle must have already started and they need to hurry. With a confident smile, Tsukasa decides to go too, as he thinks it will be worthwhile to see what the boss is capable of. The scene then takes us to the stadium, where the great battle against the area boss is about to begin. Several black armored monsters appear on the battlefield, preparing for the confrontation with the hunters. One of the hunters fights bravely against one of the giant creatures that appeared on sight. The team leader shouts not to get distracted by the cannon fodder, as the area boss will arrive any second. A female hunter is shocked to learn that those monsters are just decoys, since the low-level ones can barely handle one. With a face full of dread, she realizes that the real area boss must be something out of the ordinary. The hunters gather in a defensive formation, preparing for the arrival of the most powerful monster. Suddenly, the entire stadium begins to twist and break apart as if it were being swallowed by something. A gigantic creature's mouth opens in the sky and begins to charge a sphere of red energy. The hunters look up, terrified as a huge red dragon emerges from the shadows. The monster fires a devastating heat ray, and one of the agents shouts for everyone to run for their lives. They are shocked by the range and power of the attack, which is completely off the charts. Two hunters prepare for combat, wielding their swords with determination and courage. The leader yells for them to get out of there, because the stadium is collapsing and the area boss is coming. The team leader desperately shouts for everyone to hurry and get away from the monster. With a powerful strike, the dragon's tail smashes the stadium floor, kicking up a cloud of dust. The hunters are hit by flying debris, and one of them cries out in pain from the impact. The female hunter runs to help her fallen comrade, desperately shouting for her senior. At that moment, the giant creature slowly approaches them with a threatening and intimidating gaze. The area boss's red eyes glow intensely as it stares down the defenseless hunters. The girl realizes that with that heat ray and immense size, they are no match for the monster. The creature reveals itself as the ruler of the area, the absolute power known as the dungeon boss. Arriving on the scene, Tsukasa observes the dragon from a distance and wonders if that's all the power it has. With a determined look, he tells the area boss to just wait for what's coming. Our young man smiles and promises that in a short time, he will have a deadly trap prepared for the monster. The scene cuts to the protagonist thinking about what an area boss is and its importance in the dungeon. He knows that if he can defeat that monster, the battle in the area will be completely over. With that, Tsukasa prepares to end it all using the power of his trap master job. He then faces the enormous dragon with unwavering determination, ready for the great confrontation. One of the agents tells him to get out of the way and desperately asks where the medical team is. The leader orders the artillery squad not to hesitate and to fire a concentrated attack on the monster. The archers unleash a shower of flaming arrows towards the area boss with all their might. The attacks hit the dragon head-on, causing a series of explosions all over its body. With a glimmer of hope, the team leader asks if they finally managed to defeat it. However, the creature emerges from the smoke without a single scratch, showing its incredible resilience. Tsukasa observes everything and realizes the monster has self-regeneration and healed all the damage in an instant. He concludes that the only way to win is with a fatal blow, as the hunter's attacks have no effect. The young man remembers Asunuma's invisible guard, which was also difficult to deal with because the damage didn't accumulate. But he believes he can do it because to him, that opponent is not an unbeatable enemy. He then decides to use a trap he found in the city and gets the area boss's attention. The female hunter sees him and offers to be a decoy to distract the monster and give the others a chance. She thinks that while the creature is chasing her, her comrades can find an opening to attack. The dragon glares at her and fires a sudden heat ray, catching the girl completely by surprise. With no way to dodge, she closes her eyes and accepts her fate, thinking she's done for. At the last second, the hunter opens her eyes, confused, not understanding what happened after the attack. Suddenly, she realizes she's in Tsukasa's arms, who saved her at the final moment with a swift move. The girl is completely lost and asks where they are, as she doesn't recognize the place at all. He then explains that he saved her with a teleport trap right before she was hit by the heat ray. This trap, called Hazardous Warp, sends the target to another location unexpectedly and randomly. Normally, it would be a problem, but he controlled it for an emergency rescue, which was a very effective use. She asks who he is and how he used traps, but the young man says he doesn't have time to explain the details. He then instructs her to use the radio to warn all the squads about what's about to happen. The message is that a certain hunter will face the area boss alone and will lead it to the city center. The hunter panics and says they lured the monster there precisely to protect the civilians. But he reassures her, saying the evacuation's already over, so there will be no more casualties in the city. The girl is left behind, unsure of what to do, as she watches our hero leave for the great battle. Back at the stadium, the area boss continues to destroy everything with its completely uncontrolled fury. The dragon roars with all its might, showing its overwhelming power to the hunters who remained there. One of the hunters tries to help his injured comrade, but the situation seems utterly hopeless. He realizes it's useless because without regeneration, they're out of options to defeat the creature. Suddenly, a sink falls from the sky and hits the dragon's head, catching the monster completely by surprise. The sink trap inflicts humiliation on the prey and leaves the dragon utterly confused by the blow. From a distance, Tsukasa taunts the monster and asks if all it knows how to do is destroy things. He challenges it, saying that if the dragon is the king of the area, then it should fight like a real hunter. Angered by the taunt, the area boss prepares to fire another heat ray at him. The other hunters are terrified and wonder what that hunter is thinking, provoking the boss. The monster then fires the heat ray with full force towards our young protagonist. However, to everyone's surprise, the young man manages to dodge the attack with impressive agility. They can't believe what they're seeing and wonder if that mysterious hunter has a flight skill. But one of the hunters realizes that wasn't it, and that he saw what really happened in that moment. He explains that our young man jumped into the air using a trampoline trap that appeared out of nowhere on the ground. Tsukasa reveals that he used an evasion trap to dodge the heat ray at the last possible moment. The rising springs trap launches the prey into the sky and helps in aerial combat with free jumps. With this, he prepares to use his trap creation skill as many times as necessary. He creates another trap trampoline and uses it to propel himself towards the area boss. Our young man lands right on top of the dragon's head, surprising the creature with his audacity. He then plants himself firmly on the monster's horns, preparing for the next step of his plan. With a defiant shout, the young man says he's going to take the area boss with him to a special place. Tsukasa creates 2 teleport traps, one on himself and another on the dragon, to take it to the city. He beckons it to the great mechanism that leads to its end as the teleportation whisks them away. With that, the protagonist runs through the city streets with the area boss chasing him closely. Over the radio, one of the agents alerts everyone that the monster has left the stadium and is heading for the city. He informs them that the creature is moving and destroying the residential area in the process of its pursuit. The hunter who was saved realizes the dragon is heading towards the city's power substation. The agents realize the situation is out of control and that they can't do anything to stop it. Our young man continues to use the trap trampolines to dodge the monster's fire attacks. With a well-aimed kick, he manages to deflect one of the dragon's claws and stay in the lead. He looks back with a surprised expression, seeing how close the creature is to catching him. In a swift and desperate move, he uses his trap creation skill once more. A wall of spikes emerges from the ground, but the dragon plows through it with ease without slowing down. Tsukasa then creates another trap and manages to teleport far away from the monster's reach. With the successful teleport, he lands safely and celebrates having managed to shake it off. He has successfully lured the area boss to the great mechanism he had planned from the beginning. Now he prepares to serve his main course, a trap combo specially created for the dragon. With a touch on the ground, he activates the mechanism, and several trap circles appear around the monster. The area boss looks around, confused, not understanding what those purple energy circles are. Suddenly, chains with sharp spikes emerge from the magic circles, ready to bind their victim. The large-scale unbreakable chain trap binds the dragon tightly, sealing its movements. Several pendulums with axes appear and begin to strike the monster with full force and without mercy. The creature roars in pain as the axes hit it squarely, causing major injuries to its body. Next, several running saws appear and begin to cut the dragon from all sides. The giant large-scale saw slices the careless prey with brutal and overwhelming force. Our young man explains that the traps he generated are of a special, large-scale defeat level. He knows that if it were an ordinary monster, this would be the end, but this one has self-regeneration abilities. He knows there's still more to come and that he needs to hit the dragon with even more intense attacks to win. With that, he uses his trap creation skill once again to summon new attacks. A relentless large-scale shower of boulders rains down on the monster, causing great destruction. Several firearms emerge and fire upon the dragon with all their overwhelming firepower. The rock trap and the firearms attack the monster in tandem, creating a chaotic scene. Our young man asks if the area boss enjoyed his unexpected hell of rocks and flames. He reveals that these are the strongest traps he can currently generate and tells the monster to savor it. With the dragon cornered, he knows its regeneration ability won't be able to keep up with the damage. In this moment of desperation, the monster tries to find an escape route by flying into the sky. With that, Tsukasa urges it to fly into the sky of doom, where the final great mechanism awaits it. He follows the dragon closely and says that the trap to finish it off once and for all is right there. With a shout of activation, he extends his hand and releases a large amount of blue energy into the sky. Time seems to stop for an instant as the dark sky is illuminated by a mysterious glow. Suddenly, a lightning spear emerges from the clouds and flies towards the area boss with full force. A powerful bolt of lightning rips through the sky, preparing to strike the dragon with a devastating blow. The lightning spear pierces the flying prey from the heavens of unimaginable destructive power. The spear hits the monster head-on, causing a huge explosion of light and energy in the middle of the sky. Our young man reveals that this is probably the largest large-scale attack trap in that area. He says he was able to see this trap from the beginning when he used the scan for the first time. The dragon falls from the sky, completely defeated by the lightning spear that struck it squarely. Even though it's injured, the creature manages to survive and counterattacks with red energy of pure fury. Our young man uses a trampoline to dodge the attack and prepares for the final blow against the monster. He realizes the dragon came out with a last-ditch counterattack, but he has a plan. Tsukasa explains that the spear's characteristic isn't just its power, but its ability to conduct. With that, he creates an axe pendulum to destroy the city's power transmission tower. He unleashes all the ultra-high voltage energy from the area at once, creating a massive electrical chaos. And if this energy reacts with the lightning spear, using the principle of a lightning rod, something incredible happens. It becomes a massive boss extermination level strike, a perfect combination of traps. The dragon is hit head-on by the electrical discharge, and its body begins to slowly disintegrate. Our young man shouts for the area boss to burn to ashes from the full body combustion of the energy. Our young man explains that the high voltage from the transmission tower combined with the lightning spear was the fatal blow. If it were a normal dungeon, he wouldn't have been able to use this method, and would never have won with his own power. But here, he had an unexpected weapon, which was the transmission tower, a man-made trap. With that, the young man lands on the ground victoriously after defeating the area boss with his intelligence and strategy. He realizes that if the whole world becomes a dungeon, situations like this might happen frequently. The monster was caught in a trap from the beginning by entering this world, which was now a battlefield. With the subjugation of the area boss, the dungeon conquest is complete, and his level increases drastically. He is satisfied for having cleared almost an entire area by himself and realizes his power was real. The protagonist reflects on the last 2 years, which felt like an endless darkness for him. He spent all that time accumulating knowledge about dungeons and enduring his bully's torment. His family was the only one who believed in him, and yet he caused them all great worry. In a flashback, his younger brother advises him not to push himself so hard because their mother was worried about him. However, he thanks him for the concern but apologizes that he can't stop because he never gave up on his dream. Since that day, he was avoided by everyone and felt completely alone on his journey. With the defeat of the area boss, the threat is gone, and peace finally returns to the destroyed city. All the other monsters in the neighborhood vanish along with the boss, just as the dungeon rules dictated. The young man then turns and looks at the Hunter Association's communications base with a new objective. Until recently, the base was out of order due to the communication disruption caused by the dungeon break. But now, with the dungeon conquered, he believes he can use the communications satellite to connect. He arrives at the communications room and is faced with a locked door with a numeric keypad. With a shout of trap creation, he creates a stun trap to disable the lock. The utility stun temporarily seals target's movement with a potent electric shock. He apologizes for the emergency and enters the communications room, ready to execute his plan. He is relieved to see that the machines seem to be working perfectly despite the chaos. The protagonist sits in front of one of the computers and checks the system's security to access it. Luckily for him, he can use the computer without fingerprint authentication, making his job easier. He then reboots the system, which had crashed due to the communication disruption during the dungeon break. Suddenly, a message appears on the screen, informing him that the field verification of the current area has begun. Our young man gets curious and wonders if the system is loading information about the area he's in. The screen shows that the current area has a conquest difficulty of A and that the area boss has been defeated. He is surprised to learn that the danger level was so high and that he faced an A-level dungeon. But when he remembers all the dangerous monsters he faced, he concludes that it makes sense. Suddenly, his attention is diverted by other information that appears on the computer screen in front of him. He realizes the system is analyzing information from other areas, not just the one he's in. The narration explains that in Korea is a certain region within a dungeon divided by cities. Now that the whole world has become a dungeon, countless areas have been generated, and the system is trying to analyze them. Using dungeon analysis algorithms, it would theoretically be possible to map out all the areas in the world. Suddenly, the screen shows that the calculation is complete, and our young man wonders if it's already finished. But a calculation error appears, saying the measurement is impossible and data was only obtained for a 100-kilometer radius. He's frustrated that he can't get information on worldwide areas, but decides to focus on the region around him. His thoughts turn to his family, who are scattered and living separately amidst the chaos. He then starts looking for information about the residential areas where his family lives to find out what happened. Several monitoring screens appear showing images of different areas of the city and their statuses. He sees the names of the areas and the conquest status of each with a difficulty level of A. With wide eyes, he realizes that all the analyzable areas are of high difficulty and starts to panic. Tsukasa shouts in despair upon seeing that all the areas are level A and fears the worst for his family. He thinks that perhaps the other areas are already in a state of devastation and that only his city is safe. But then, he realizes the signal doesn't indicate total annihilation and that there's still hope of finding them. One of the monitors shows that the Sujitatsu area has been completely conquered, and the status is updated. He sees that several areas have defeated their bosses and successfully restored communication disruptions. With this, the young man realizes he's not alone in this fight and that other conquerors are emerging. He wonders if the post-dungeon break hunt, a new war of conquest, has already begun all over the world. Even with the chaos, he sees that there are several areas where the monsters have been eliminated and the conquest is complete. He concludes that there are skilled S-rank hunters in other districts, and that the swift conquests are thanks to them. Our young man is thoughtful for a moment but soon remembers his main priority at the moment. He goes back to the computer and decides to confirm his family's safety before anything else. His mother lives in the Sujitatsu district, so he starts looking for specific information about that area. Security camera footage is shown, revealing the current situation in various parts of the city. He is relieved to see that his mother's area's conquest status has also been updated to complete. The computer confirms the recovery of the communication network and the complete conquest of the area's dungeon. With the network restored, he takes out his phone and decides to call his mother to see if she's okay. He calls her, and the phone rings as the scene shows the destruction caused by the dungeon break. The call is answered, and our young man desperately asks how the situation is over there. His mother explains that the hunters came and sorted things out and asks about the central ward where he is. He reassures her that everything is fine and asks if she was able to talk to his sister, Shiori. With a worried voice, his mother replies that the call connected once but was then cut off. The call dropped immediately due to signal interference, and he is shocked by the news. He then tells his mother not to move from where she is and hangs up the phone with a serious expression. With his mother safe, his focus shifts to his sister, and he wonders if there is still signal interference over there. He remembers that she lives in the school dormitory, which is in the West District, and starts searching for information. The screen shows that the West area's dungeon has not yet been conquered and that there's a special notification. Our young man is curious about the notification, as the dungeon conquest has not yet been completed. The message says the crisis has passed and that reinforcements are unnecessary as they have taken control of the district. He realizes this is not an official communication from headquarters and that something very strange is happening. Suddenly, the broadcast is hacked, and a man appears, saying they are no longer pawns of the association. Our hero realizes someone is hijacking the signal and is shocked by this turn of events. The man declares the withdrawal from all spheres of control and the foundation of an independent nation. Tsukasa becomes desperate upon learning that the district where his sister is has just declared independence. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns around, startled by the possibility of an intruder in the room. Someone has broken the entry lock to the control room, and he realizes he is no longer alone. He decides that the information gathering ends here and prepares to escape using his skill. He uses trap creation to teleport the roof of the communications base. A magic circle appears, and our young man is enveloped in a purple light before disappearing from the room. The confusing leap trap sends him to a random location, and he manages to narrowly escape the intruders. He manages an emergency escape, but with his magic power depleted, that weak trap is his limit. The rare item increased his maximum magic power capacity, but not the amount he can use. And since he used many traps in the battle against the boss, his energy is almost gone. He realizes it's still not enough and that he needs to level up to increase his maximum capacity. Suddenly, his phone rings again, and he answers it, not knowing who it could be in this situation. He looks at his phone screen and sees that it's a call from his sister Shiori, which surprises him. With his heart in his throat, he answers the call and prays that she is safe amidst all the chaos. With her voice full of static, she asks if he can hear her and how the city where he is doing. He says everything is fine and asks about her, but the signal interference continues to get in the way. She replies that she's fine and that it's safe where she is, but the call starts breaking up more and more. Suddenly, the call ends and our young man is left staring at his phone, not knowing what to do. He wonders if she is really safe, even with monsters around in the suspicious broadcast. After seeing the message from the local hunters, he knows he can't just back down and ignore it. He decides he can't worry about his depleted magic power and that he needs to act now. With that, the young man vows that he will confirm his sister's safety with his own eyes, no matter the cost. The scene then takes us to a hunter base where several injured civilians are being treated. Supplies are loaded quickly and the evacuated residents receive urgent medical attention. One of the hunters notices that the magic power recovery potions are running out and becomes concerned. At that moment, our young man appears and grabs one of the potions to recover his energy for the journey. He thinks he'll just borrow a few and that if he does his part, it won't be a big deal. With that, he drinks the potion in one gulp, feeling his magic power slowly restoring. His magic power bar is fully recovered, and he knows he won't have to worry for a while. The narration explains that between his location and his sister's, there are 2 areas separating them. And according to the information he obtained, neither of these areas has completed its dungeon conquest. This means that combat with monsters will be unavoidable, and he wonders if he can handle it with his current stats. He knows that if he ends up fighting another area boss, he'll be in serious trouble with his current power. To avoid this, he realizes he really needs one thing before setting off on his journey. He needs to level up to increase his absolute magic capacity and become stronger for whatever comes next. With that, he arrives in the Koeb area, determined to advance and level up, no matter the cost. His first mission since awakening his hunter powers, a journey of dungeon crossing, begins. The world that was once peaceful has now become a dungeon, divided into countless dangerous and hostile areas. Even if peace returns to one area, the neighboring one might have another boss, and the battle continues endlessly. He then enters the Koeb ward, an area where the dungeon has not yet been conquered and danger is everywhere. Suddenly, he notices someone coming towards him and prepares for a possible confrontation. 2 men appear and stare at him, saying he looks like a hunter like them, and they watch him. They ask if he has any rare items and say they need equipment to face the monsters. Our young man replies that unfortunately, he doesn't have anything, and one of them comments that everyone says the same thing. Suddenly, one of the men draws his claws and says it can't be helped in times like these. Tsukasa realizes their intention, and his face fills with fear and surprise at the hunter's attitude. They attack him and say that if he doesn't hand it over willingly, they'll take it by force without hesitation. Our hero manages to dodge the attack by a hair and realizes they are not messing around. With a scratch on his face, he understands that these guys are bandits taking advantage of the chaotic situation. The 2 of them leap towards him, ready to attack him with everything they have to steal his items. But Tsukasa isn't intimidated and uses his trap creation skill to defend himself from the attack. A purple magic circle appears on the ground, and the bandits look up with a mocking smile on their faces. A heavy stone called Disaster Weight falls on them, crushing them against the ground with force. The 2 of them are trapped under the weight of the trap, unable to move or react to the surprise attack. He thinks that if he finishes them off there, he might gain experience points, just like when he defeats monsters. Although the possibility isn't 0, he decides he needs to observe the hunter's movements closely. Our young man decides he will only hunt monsters, and that he doesn't need to deal with humans to level up. He then decides to test a new way of farming experience using a specific trap he found. The scene takes us to a plaza in the Koei ward where some monsters are firing energy beams. A girl screams in terror as she is hit head on by the attack of one of the giant robots. The monster aims its energy beam at her but stops suddenly, as if confused by something. A wooden dummy, like statue, catches the creature's attention with a strange whistling sound. The whistling doll mischievously attracts monsters, and our young man watches it from the top of a tree. He explains that it's a trap that summons monsters and that with it, they will gather in one place. The young man sees 4 of them approaching, and thinks that it's still not enough to farm experience. With that, he uses his trap creation skill to summon another one of his creations. Suddenly, a huge iron cage emerges from the ground and traps all the monsters that were nearby. The robots try to escape, but the cage bars are very sturdy, and they are trapped inside. The iron cage trap completely confines the prey with its strong and resistant bars. A padlock appears on the cage door, sealing the only exit for the now cornered monsters. They start to stir inside the cage, desperately trying to find a way to escape. Our young man watches everything from above and says that's right, trap all of them inside the cage. With a wicked smile, our young man announces that the real trap creation is about to begin. A magic mirror appears inside the cage, and one of the robots approaches to see what it is. Suddenly, its reflection in the mirror comes to life, and a perfect clone of the creature appears beside it. The monster becomes confused and starts to disintegrate into particles of light, not understanding what happened. The copy mirror trap reflects and multiplies the monsters that are trapped inside the cage. Our hero explains that a trap that multiplies monsters is the worst thing you could possibly find. Under normal circumstances, it would be something you would never want to encounter in any dungeon. But inside the cage, it doesn't matter because the monsters can't escape, and he can multiply them at will. He continues to use the mirror to fill the cage with clones of the robots until there's no more room. The more monsters he defeats, the more experience points he gains, and this is the perfect setup. With a determined look, he says he will defeat them all at once and become even stronger. The cage becomes completely packed with monsters, squeezing against each other with no space left. And when the cage is full, he prepares to activate the final mechanism of his farming plan. With a shout of trap creation, he summons a giant magic circle over the monster's cage. The purple energy intensifies as the final trap prepares to crush all the creatures. The robots scream in despair as they realize they have nowhere to run and are cornered. A massive stone appears and crushes the entire cage with overwhelming and destructive power. Our young man is satisfied to see that his sweeping technique using traps worked perfectly. He nicknamed this technique the Experience Cube and wonders if he defeated hundreds of monsters at once. With that, his experience points skyrocket, and he levels up, gaining more power and strength. Suddenly, he notices something else has happened, and is surprised by the new notification on his screen. He has acquired a new skill and wonders what it could be after so many experience points. The new skill, Trap Domination, allows him to control trap monsters as he pleases. With a green glow around him, he begins to feel the power of domination flowing through his entire body. Suddenly, he realizes that one of the robots managed to escape his annihilation technique earlier. He sees the survivor lying on the ground and thinks it's the perfect opportunity to test his new skill. With a confident smile, he decides to try out his new power and extends his hand toward the monster. A green magic circle appears, and a mysterious energy begins to envelop the defenseless robot. He then shouts the name of his new skill, Trap Domination, with all his strength and power. Our young man then shouts the name of his new skill, Trap Domination, with all his might. The green energy hits the robot head on but is instantly repelled without any effect. Our young man is shocked and realizes his new skill didn't work as he had expected. He then understands that the skill only works on trap monsters and that this is the condition for its use. That's why it doesn't work on regular monsters, and using the technique on a common enemy would be useless. With a shout of trap creation, he summons a finishing sword to put an end to the robot. He levels up and realizes he needs to do a proper investigation of the area before moving forward. The young man says he has put it off for various reasons, but now is the time to do a complete scan. He places his hand on the ground and prepares to use his trap scanning skill. With a large release of blue energy, he activates the skill to search for traps that already exist in the area. With his enhanced vision, he begins to analyze the area to discover where the dangers are and what kind they are. He finds a place where traps are densely concentrated and realizes it's a museum. Looking further inside, he discovers an underground passage that is several kilometers long. With his eyes glowing, he is shocked to think that something like this exists beneath the city. He then stands up with the smile of someone who has discovered a great secret and understands what it means. Our young man decides he has no choice but to go to that museum to investigate further. He walks through the dark and silent forest, getting closer and closer to his mysterious destination. The protagonist hides behind a tree and cautiously observes the surroundings before continuing. Suddenly, he comes across a large lake in the middle of the forest and is surprised by its size. He realizes the museum must be nearby and continues his search with even more determination. Finally, he finds a huge and imposing museum building and prepares to enter the premises. He knows that if his intuition is correct, that place hides a great underground secret. With that, the young man enters the museum with cautious steps, ready to face any danger that may appear. He remembers that the interior of the building is full of traps and that he needs to walk very carefully. Suddenly, he realizes that something is moving around and that it has been completely obvious the whole time. He then turns to the suspicious object and prepares to use his new domination skill. A green energy envelopes his hand and he shouts, "Trap domination," with all his might. The moving chest is revealed to be a monster and is caught by our hero's domination technique. The young man is satisfied to see that the technique worked and that he managed to dominate the creature. As he thought it was a mimic, a monster disguised as a treasure chest to deceive the unsuspecting. With that, he adds the mimic to his arsenal of trap monsters, ready to use it in battle. He explains that the mimic's very existence is a trap, a different kind of monster. Ever since he used the scan, he could clearly see that there was a monster-type trap there. With that, the young man celebrates the success of his domination and prepares to use his new ally. But to his surprise, the mimic transforms into a shield and floats in front of him. Suddenly, the monster starts to emit smoke and lunges at him with incredible speed. He is shocked and wonders why he is being attacked if the domination technique was supposed to work. With no time to react, he is hit head-on by the mimic and is thrown a great distance by the impact. He hits the ground hard, feeling the pain of the blow, and realizes he let his guard down for a moment. Sitting on the floor, he looks at the mimic, which is now on top of him with a strange expression. To his surprise, the creature starts to act cute and affectionate, like a happy little puppy. Our young man is completely confused and just watches the monster nuzzling him with joy. He then realizes that the mimic has become attached to him and that the domination worked in an unexpected way. With sparkling eyes, the creature continues to show its affection for its new master with cute sounds. The young man feels a bit uncomfortable with the situation but tries to ignore it and focus on what's important. He finds the monster's behavior a little creepy but concludes that the domination worked. Now that he has confirmed the effect of the new skill, he prepares to go to the underground passage. He goes down the stairs with his new companion following closely behind, ready for the next stage. The protagonist thinks that it's not possible for such a large passage to have originally existed there. He believes it's space created when the district became a dungeon and that it must have a purpose. Our young man thinks it might be a secret passage to avoid the monsters on the surface. With this, he could avoid the trouble of fighting at every step and pass through the area all at once. He hopes his theory is correct and that he isn't making a huge miscalculation. In exchange for advancing quickly, he knows that this path seems to have a considerable danger. He then decides to give his new companion a name to make communication between them easier. With a gentle smile, he names the mimic Mimi, and the monster seems to really like the name. The creature's eyes sparkle, and it makes happy sounds upon receiving a name from its master. Our young man asks if it's happy to have gotten a name, and the monster responds with more joy. He then warns Mimi to get ready, because from here on, the journey will be very dangerous for both of them. The monster barks in response as if it understands the message and is ready for anything. With his new ally by his side, he feels safer and prepares to open the mysterious door. Upon opening the door, he is faced with a dark silhouette and a purple aura emanating from it. The figure reveals itself to be a knight in full armor who seems extremely powerful. At that moment, the torches in the corridor light up, illuminating the path ahead of them. Tsukasa then realizes that it's actually a stone statue in the shape of a knight. He thinks that in this room, there's only one statue, and its sole purpose is the exit door right behind it. With Mimi following him closely, our young man walks towards the statue with great caution. The young man slowly approaches the stone statue that is blocking his path to the exit. With a focused gaze, he seems to be waiting for something to happen at any moment. Suddenly, the statue starts to move and raises its sword, preparing to attack. Our hero isn't startled and creates a magic barrier to protect himself from the imminent attack. The creature attacks, but he blocks with a stone wall that appears to defend him. Even with the defense, the stone knight continues its threatening and intimidating gaze. The monster's sword collides with Tsukasa's magic barrier, which begins to crack on impact. As he suspected, it was a trap monster that activates when someone gets close. He explains that his scan had already detected a high-risk trap monster there, but he couldn't use domination on it in its statue form, so he approached it on purpose to activate it. The protagonist is surprised because it seems something in his plan didn't go as expected. The armored monster prepares to attack again, its sword glowing with a blue hue. The creature attacks with more force, and the young man summons an iron wall to try and defend himself. The wall is easily destroyed, and he realizes that this monster is much stronger than he thought. With the force of the impact, our young man is dragged backward, unable to hold his ground. He is pushed violently by the knight, which shows impressive physical strength. The monster then uses a movement skill and creates several images of itself to confuse him. Tsukasa realizes that with this erratic movement, the creature is aiming for a specific point. With a glint in his eye, he quickly understands his opponent's attack strategy. The knight attacks his blind spot, but he creates a diamond shield to protect himself at the last second. He manages to block the attack and confirms that the monster was definitely aiming for his back. The young man then decides he doesn't need to fight it head-on since it's a trap monster. With a confident smile, he prepares his trap domination technique to end the fight. The skill's green energy hits the monster head-on, catching the creature completely by surprise. The green energy hits the creature squarely but doesn't seem to have much effect. With that, the young man is shocked to see that his domination technique was completely nullified. Hiding behind a pillar, Mimi watches the scene in fear as her master is left speechless. He understands that the skill's level is low, which is why it doesn't work on high-level monsters on the first try. Without wasting time, the protagonist decides he needs to try a new approach to win. He then thinks that if he keeps attacking, the skill will eventually work. With that, he fires several green energy beams, but the knight dodges them all with ease. The young man realizes he can't hit such a fast opponent, and that the first hit was just luck. So he decides he needs to read the monster's trajectory to predict its movements and attack. Desperate, he tries to think of some way to predict the creature's attacks. Suddenly, he has an idea and places his hand on the ground to use his trap creation skill. With a shout of trap creation, he activates his power just in time to defend himself from the attack. The monster approaches quickly and raises its sword to deliver the final blow against our young man. But the knight stops for a moment when it feels something wet falling on its armor. A basin of water falls on the creature, and the trap's description appears as basin drop. The monster is left completely drenched and confused by that unusual and unexpected trap. Annoyed by the prank, the knight attacks with fury, and our hero narrowly dodges the blow. He manages to dodge with agility and lands safely, far from the sword's reach. The young man wonders if he annoyed the monster with his joke trap and faces it with a smile. The creature starts moving at high speed again, preparing for a new attack. But thanks to the water that soaked it, our young man realizes a great advantage in this situation. The monster starts leaving trails of water droplets all over the floor as it moves quickly. With this, Tsukasa can see the creature's movements and easily read its attack pattern. He then prepares to use domination, aiming exactly where the knight is going to be. The young man fires the green energy towards the monster, which runs directly into the trap. The creature is hit head-on but manages to block the attack with its sword at the last moment. But our hero doesn't give up and continues to attack with his domination skill relentlessly. He believes that if he keeps hitting the monster, the skill's effect will accumulate. With that, he fires another green energy beam, preparing to dominate the creature for good. The young man is confident that if he continues with the attacks, the technique will eventually work. With a shout of domination, he vows to make that high-level monster his newest ally. Hiding, Mimi imitates him and cheers for her master's domination technique to work. The knight stops moving, and our young man faces it, exhausted after using so much power. Suddenly, his magic power bar appears, and he realizes he only has enough energy for one more attack. With his face covered in sweat, he wonders if he can finish the fight with his last chance. The monster then stumps hard on the ground, preparing to attack again without hesitation. The young man decides to bet everything on his last blow and prepares to use domination one more time. With his finger pointed at the enemy, he shouts for his skill to finally work. He then uses all his remaining power and shouts, "Trap domination," with all his might. A huge explosion of green energy hits the knight head-on in a final act of desperation. The creature is completely enveloped in the smoke and dust kicked up by the final attack. Our young man is left panting and watches the scene with his heart in his throat, waiting for the result. Suddenly, the blue glow in the monster's eyes starts to fade, and its intent to fight disappears. He realizes the subjugation was a success and points at the creature, which is now motionless. The knight then drops its sword, which falls to the ground with a loud, metallic clang. Next, the creature kneels and apologizes to its new master for its previous rudeness. Tsukasa is shocked to hear the monster's voice and wonders if it can talk to humans. Confused, he approaches and asks who exactly this mysterious creature is. In response, the knight begins to remove its helmet, revealing its true identity to him. To his surprise, underneath the armor was a beautiful woman with long white hair. She looks at him with a confident smile, and our young man is left completely speechless by the scene. He continues to watch her, not believing what he's seeing, as he didn't expect this at all. The knight says she is a nameless servant and asks him to give her a name to become his subordinate. The young man is confused by the request but agrees and thinks of a name that would suit a knight. With a smile, he approaches and says that from now on, her name will be Jean. The knight's eyes sparkle, and her face blushes, seeming very happy with the name. She says it is a great honor and humbly accepts, asking to be called that from now on. Our young man feels a bit awkward with the formality of the situation and her reaction. Suddenly, Mimi appears, yipping in a cute and excited way at the arrival of the new companion. With an expression of jealousy and joy, the creature seems to approve of the new addition to their team. Mimi runs towards Jean, yipping excitedly at the arrival of the new teammate. Jane then says that Mimi is her senior and that she will be second in command, asking for her guidance. The protagonist is confused by the scene and wonders if there's a hierarchy even among monsters. But he quickly changes the subject, saying it's not the time for that as they are in a hurry to leave. The young man says they should head to the underground passage, but Jean tells him to wait a moment. She then explains that by defeating her, the next event was triggered, and the battle with the area boss will begin. The knight continues, saying that the boss sleeping in the room ahead will awaken, and he panics. Jane then reveals that she is, so to speak, the guardian of that dungeon and looks at him seriously. She explains that her battle with an intruder serves as a signal for the area boss to move as well. The woman states that the battle is inevitable and that it's impossible to leave without defeating the boss. The young man can't believe the fight is mandatory, as he thought he had chosen the easiest path. With that, he decides it's best to go back and that he'll give up on the passage to take the surface route. However, his new ally says that won't work for him either, no way. The door they entered through now glows red and can no longer be moved by human strength. She says that once you advance in a dungeon, retreat becomes impossible for anyone. The young man shouts that fighting is impossible because he used up all his magic power in the last battle. Suddenly, Mimi starts making some noises, and the protagonist asks what happened. The creature then opens its mouth, revealing it has something stored inside for him. With that, the little monster pulls out a magic power recovery potion from within itself. Our hero recognizes the item and is surprised to see that it's a potion to recover his mana. He then pets Mimi and wonders if the creature has a convenient storage function. With the potion in hand, he smiles and says that now he is fully prepared for whatever comes next. But Jean asks if he can use advanced water magic, because without it, the mana wouldn't help. She explains that the boss is an incarnation of flames and that a concentrated water attack would be needed. The young man says water magic is difficult and that the trap he used on her is the limit of his power. He then starts pacing back and forth, thinking of a solution to that problem. Suddenly, the protagonist stops and looks at Mimi with an expression of someone who has had a great idea. He then asks Jean if she said the door can't be opened by human strength, and she confirms. With a confident smile on his face, our young man seems to have found a loophole in the dungeon's rules. He then asks what would happen if subjugated monsters like her and Mimi tried to open the door. The knight agrees and says that if it's monsters, a retreat would probably be possible. But suddenly, the whole place starts to shake violently, startling everyone there. She explains that the area boss has lost its patience and decided to attack on its own. Immediately after, the front door explodes in flames right in front of them with a loud bang. Jane then shouts for her master to use defense magic, as the flames are coming their way. Without hesitation, our young man creates a magic barrier to protect himself from the fire attack. A huge explosion occurs, and the flames destroy everything around with overwhelming power. With that, they are completely surrounded by fire with nowhere to escape from that situation. He struggles to maintain the barrier as the flames burn everything around him. The young man is shocked by the firepower and realizes the room is slowly collapsing. He then creates a larger shield to protect himself from the rubble that starts falling from the ceiling. After the dust settles, they see that the floor beneath them has transformed into an arena. Our young man and his companions find themselves on top of a huge purple magic circle. The battle arena reveals itself, and they prepare for the confrontation with the area boss. With a serious look, the protagonist prepares for what's to come without showing any fear. Then, the area boss finally appears amidst the flames with an imposing and threatening air. The creature is the very incarnation of fire, with eyes that glow intensely and horns. He realizes that the previous rooms were just a path to reach the main boss. With a sweaty face, he knows he needs to do something fast to get out of there alive. The young man then says he can't just stand still and needs to move before everything collapses. He turns to Mimi and says he has a favor to ask of the little creature loyal to him. The young man asks her to go back the way they came while petting her affectionately. But Jean shouts that an attack is coming and that he needs to dodge immediately to avoid being hit. The fire monster then lunges at them with all its fury and destructive power. With a focused look, our hero prepares to execute his risky and intelligent plan. He then pushes Mimi in the opposite direction while Jean watches him, not understanding his action. With that, Tsukasa and his new ally prepare to face the area boss alone. The young man then shouts, asking what happened to Mimi to distract the monster's attention. Meanwhile, the little creature runs safely towards the door from which they came. He explains that a human can't go back, but if Mimi tries, the door should open for her. But he says there's an exception for trap monsters that have become his allies like her. With that, he shouts to Mimi and says he's counting on her, as everything depends on her success. The young man then uses trap creation and summons a teleport hole right in front of the boss. The trap is a mysterious teleport hole that can discharge various objects at once. Intimidated, the fire creature attacks with a powerful blast of flames in their direction. Seeing this, Jean shouts for her master to be careful as the second wave of attacks is coming. The monster then fires a devastating beam of fire from its mouth with overwhelming power. The knight moves with agility and uses her sword to cut and deflect the approaching flames. With her precise movements, she manages to protect her master from being hit by the enemy's attack. With a smile on his face, our young man thanks Jean for her help and protection in the battle. He says he no longer needs help dodging and will continue to serve as bait for the monster. He then orders her attack the boss's left leg to seal its movements once and for all. The knight accepts the order and swears she will fulfill her duty, even if it costs her own life. With that, the young man thinks that now the rest of the plan depends solely on Mimi and his orders. The first order was for the little creature to go back the way they came and get out of the museum as quickly as possible. Next, she was to run in a straight line through the forest without stopping for any reason along the way. Her final destination was the large lake on the other side of that dark and dense forest. With a determined look, the cute creature prepares to carry out its master's mission. Without hesitation, the little monster dives into the icy waters of the lake to execute the attack plan. The small creature sinks quickly into the depths of the lake under the light of the full moon in the sky. Back in the battle, the area boss roars in fury from the attacks it's receiving from Jean. Our young man uses a diamond shield to protect himself from the fire monster's attacks. With difficulty, he shouts to Jean and asks if she isn't ready to attack the boss yet. The knight replies that she has found an opening and that now is the time to carry out her final order. With a swift and precise strike, she attacks the area boss's leg with all her strength and power. The fire creature roars in pain as it's hit squarely by the knight's surprise attack. With the monster injured, Tsukasa seizes the opportunity to use his creation skill. He manages to seal the boss's movements, which is now trapped under the teleport hole. At that moment, Mimi is already at the bottom of the lake, ready to activate the final trap of the plan. The creature opens its mouth, revealing the item our hero had placed inside it earlier. The item he placed was the other teleport hole, which is now activated at the bottom of the lake. Once it's placed, the entrance sucks in everything around it and sends it to the exit our hero created. With the area boss trapped, our young man observes the teleport hole with a victorious smile. Suddenly, a few drops of water start to fall from the portal right on top of the monster's head. The fire creature looks up confused, not understanding where that water was coming from. Tsukasa then faces the boss with the look of someone who has already won the battle and whose plan has succeeded. The fire monster starts to get annoyed with the water falling on it and roars with all its might. Suddenly, a huge amount of water from the lake begins to gush from the portal with great force. The flow of water is so intense that it looks like a waterfall crashing down right on top of the area boss. With this, the creature's flames begin to extinguish, and its power diminishes drastically. The entire arena starts to flood with the water that won't stop falling from the magic portal. Seeing the flood, he shouts for Jane to stay behind him so she doesn't get swept away by the current. The young man then uses his trap creation skill once more to protect themselves. With that, a huge stone wall emerges from the ground right in front of them with a purple glow. The prison wall is a trap that blocks any kind of invasion from the outside. He celebrates the success of his water torture attack using the teleport holes. To defeat the boss, a massive flow of water was needed, which would have required an army of mages. Since there was no way to generate water there, the solution he found was to use the lake outside. With that, the portal sucks up the lake water and connects it to the exit he created above the boss. The fire monster screams in pain as the water extinguishes its flames and weakens its power. The creature tries to protect itself with its hands, but the force of the water is much greater and overpowers it. Suddenly, a red orb of light appears on the monster's chest, revealing its power core. Jane then shouts to her master that this is the enemy's core and that he must destroy it. Our young man prepares to use trap creation one last time to finish the fight. With that, a longsword emerges from a magic circle, ready to deliver the final blow to the boss. The finishing longsword is a weapon used to finish off enemies that are near their end. The sword strikes the monster's core head-on, causing a massive explosion of light and energy. The creature's body begins to disintegrate and turn to ash after its core is destroyed. The area boss is completely defeated, and the stone wall dissolves along with the water. Our young man uses his creation skill to summon an item with an intense purple glow. He fires a beam of purple energy that pierces what's left of the fire monster's body. At that moment, Mimi appears from within the water portal, yipping in a cute and excited way. Jane praises her companion, and the subjugation of the area boss is finally successfully completed. With a smile, the young man thanks them both, but suddenly something starts to glow in the monster's remains. The small creature jumps into his lap, and he approaches to see what that mysterious glow was. A dagger shrouded in magical power emerges from the ground right in front of them with a blue aura. His new ally then asks her master to accept the item, as it is the hidden treasure of that area. Our young man is surprised to hear the expression, hidden item, and stares at the weapon with curiosity. He realizes it is an ultra-rare and hard-to-obtain item and approaches to pick it up. The knight explains that the weapon was at the bottom of the lake, and came along with the water flow from the portal. With the item in hand, he feels more powerful and is satisfied with his new acquisition. The young man thinks it's amazing that a hidden item was hidden at the bottom of a lake. The weapon's description appears as Mystic Lightblade, an item of unknown power. He says it seems to be a special weapon, and that he'll enjoy discovering its powers by using it. But suddenly, the ground starts to shake violently once again, startling everyone there. The protagonist panics, but Jane reassures him, telling him to stay calm. She explains that the noise accompanies the completion of the area boss's subjugation. With that, a path of light opens up, revealing the escape route to the next area of the dungeon. They then arrive at the border between the Owatani and Kawabe wards, exiting through a manhole. Our young man realizes that if he takes one more step, he'll be in the neighboring ward, and he stares at the manhole. He reflects on everything that has happened when suddenly someone calls his attention from a distance. Seeing a group of men approaching, he is startled by their presence there. He then tells Jane to hide because if they see him with monsters, it could cause trouble. With that, the young man moves away from the manhole and prepares to meet the approaching men. One of them scolds him for walking alone, and our young man nervously nods in agreement. He recognizes them as the Hunter Association's rescue squad and feels more relieved. But one of the men tells him to get out of the way, and he prepares to obey without question. However, the leader recognizes him and asks if he is the S-rank hunter, Ninamiya-kun. With a smile, the man shows a tablet with his picture and says his reputation has spread. Our hero is shocked to hear that the rumor of him defeating a boss alone has already spread. He remembers the battle and thinks he made a big scene, so it's not strange that rumors have spread. The man then invites him to join their squad and act together from now on. He says that using his authority, he can complete his hunter registration right there and looks at him. Our young man realizes that this is an official hunter recruitment, his long-held dream. However, to everyone's surprise, the young man refuses the offer with a serious expression on his face. The squad leader is shocked by the response and asks if he is going to continue acting alone. The young man bows respectfully, and the man understands that he has his own circumstances for refusing. He then says that if the young man wishes to act alone, that's fine, but asks him to be careful. The man warns him about illegal hunters who are committing crimes in the neighboring Iwatani ward. Tsukasa remembers the bandits who attacked him and thinks the man's concern makes sense. He concludes that if the association is warning about them, there must be other, more dangerous ones out there. After the hunters leave, he calls for Jane to come out of the manhole and continue their journey. The knight then asks if he is sure about not joining those people, and he confirms. The young man says he no longer needs the official registration because now the whole world is a dungeon. Furthermore, he states that he can no longer trust anyone, not even the Hunter Association. With a smile, he turns around and says he already has companions he can truly trust. He looks at Mimi and Jean and says they are the most reliable companions he could ever ask for. The two of them blush and are happy with their master's compliment, looking at him affectionately. With that, they finally arrive in the Iwatani ward and our hero prepares for a new scan. He says he will confirm the area's characteristics and find the best path to cross it. The map of the area appears in his enhanced vision, showing the location of various traps. His vision shows the entire city with red dots indicating all the dangers of the location. Suddenly, a large purple area appears on the map, catching our young protagonist's attention. With his hand glowing, he is shocked to see that concentration of traps on the map. He doesn't understand what it is and is completely frozen by the unexpected discovery. With his new allies by his side, he arrives at an amusement park on the outskirts of Iwatani. The young man says this is the location his trap scan had shown him before. He is intrigued by that mysterious mark he saw for the first time and decides to investigate. His main objective is to reach the West District to find his sister, but he is curious. Even though he's in a hurry, he decides he needs to investigate that dangerous mark to find out what it is. Mimi stops walking and makes a strange noise, catching her master's attention, who asks what's wrong. Suddenly, our young man becomes alert as he senses something strange right in front of him. He comes across a huge, box-like stone structure in the middle of the park. Tsukasa realizes that this is the source of the mark and that it appeared when the area became a dungeon. With that, the young man approaches a stone tablet to read what is written on it. The inscription says that a powerful destroyer sleeps there and that no one should touch it. The protagonist then wonders what a powerful destroyer is and if it's some kind of mechanism. Seeing the situation, Jane warns him, saying that it could be a catastrophic trap. The knight explains that it's a rare, large-scale trap with unknown details. He is surprised, as he has never heard of this type of trap in the association's records. With a bad feeling, the young man decides it's not a good idea to activate it without thinking. So, he decides to ignore it for now as he needs to hurry to find his sister. They leave the amusement park and enter a forest to continue their journey. The young man thinks that although this is the shortest path, choosing it based only on the map could be a bad move. At that moment, he hears a noise and quickly turns around to see what's happening. The protagonist sees a group of hunters fighting a monster, and one of them shouts for them to run. He observes the squad and notices they seem strong but lack combat experience. Because of this, the monster manages to dominate the fight, and the hunters can't stop it at all. Tsukasa realizes it's only a matter of time until they're all defeated and decides he needs to help. Without hesitating, he starts running toward the battle to save the hunters in danger. Suddenly, the young man stops running and looks up at the sky, surprised by something coming from above. A mysterious hunter appears and strikes the monster with a swift and powerful blow. Her attack hits the ground with incredible force, causing a huge explosion of light. Our young man is pushed back by the shockwave of the attack and shields himself with his arm. Jane and Mimi run to his side, and the knight asks if her master is alright. The creature that was attacking the hunters appears on the ground, completely defeated. Tsukasa is shocked to see that the monster was taken down with just a single blow. The mysterious hunter then lands on the ground with an air of superiority and confidence. The other hunters are in disbelief and wonder who defeated the monster with a single strike. Tsukasa watches the scene in shock, realizing the mysterious warrior is incredibly powerful. The hunter apologizes for suddenly jumping into their battle and introduces herself. With a smile, she reveals herself as Asahina, an S-rank hunter from the Hunters Association. She then explains that she was looking for the area boss and ended up finding them along the way. Hiding, Tsukasa realizes her strike was no ordinary one and that she's a true S-rank. From a distance, the young man watches the hunter invite the others to search for the boss with her. One of the hunters seems hesitant about the proposal, and she notices their distrust. The young woman then says that finding the boss isn't the end and that there's a high chance of a battle. The hunters get scared but soon change their minds when they hear the S-rank's proposal. One of them recognizes her and joins her, saying he's in her debt for saving him. With that, they all agree to go with her and prepare for the search for the area boss. With a gentle smile, the girl invites them to come with her, and they set off on the mission. The hunters think the S-rank is naive and that if the battle gets tough, they'll use her as bait. Jane then asks if they should approach, and our young man says to leave them be. He says he needs to get through the forest quickly, and doesn't have time to get involved. With that, they reach a river, and the young man realizes the path ahead is long and difficult. Our young man says he must press on, as this is the only way to his destination. But suddenly, he stops and looks to the side as if he sensed something strange nearby. With an annoyed expression, he realizes that ever since he entered this area, he's had nothing but trouble. Suddenly, a mysterious voice tells him to come out from where he is, as they already know of his presence. Several rocks begin to move on their own, revealing someone hidden right underneath them. Tsukasa then uses his trap creation ability to prepare for an attack. A man emerges from under the rocks and begs our young man not to harm him. He says he's just an ordinary civilian who was passing by when he was caught by surprise. With that, the man kneels and implores the young man to spare his life and not offer him up as food. The protagonist is confused by the man's reaction and asks what he's talking about. Suddenly, Mimi appears and startles the civilian, who screams in terror upon seeing the creature approach. The man then remembers that the young man is with monsters and that his life is in danger. Seeing the situation, our young man apologizes for the misunderstanding and introduces himself to the civilian. The man is shocked to learn that he's a hunter and not an enemy as he had thought. With that, the civilian kneels and begs for help, saying he's in a desperate situation. The man says he got lost and implores our young man to guide him to a safe place. With a thoughtful look, the protagonist says he's in a hurry and that this is a problem. But he thinks that he would feel bad just abandoning the man there with so many dangers around. He then remembers the boss search party and thinks about asking them to protect the civilian. With a smile, the young man agrees to help and says he'll find a squad to protect him. The man celebrates excitedly and thanks him for being saved, saying he can now go home. Suddenly, Mimi appears and startles the civilian once again with her unexpected and cute presence. Our young man asks Mimi not to scare him, and the man apologizes for being so easily startled. The young man then says that traveling with monsters is dangerous and that the association wouldn't look kindly on it. With that, he asks Jane and Mimi to wait there, as he alone is enough to guide the man. The knight agrees and the man watches the scene, a bit confused by the whole situation. So, our hero and the civilians start walking along the forest path to find the squad. The man feels relieved to have found a hunter and to finally be safe. But Tsukasa warns him not to let his guard down, as a monster could attack at any moment. Suddenly, the civilian's expression changes, and with a wicked smile, he prepares to attack the young man. He thinks that our young man is naive and that he should be worried about humans, not just monsters. With that, the man attacks him from behind with a light ability, revealing himself as a rogue hunter. But the young man creates a magical barrier, and the man's attack is reflected right back at him. The reflecting strike. Trap counterattacks even before being hit by the enemy. Our young man turns around and says he was expecting that, as he had been warned about rogue hunters. He reveals that he already knew the man was a malicious hunter and glares at him with contempt. The bandit then asks how he knew, and our hero doesn't answer, just observes him. Suddenly, the man shows a ring of light and asks if he noticed what it was. With a wicked smile, he reveals that he stole the dagger our young man had just acquired. Tsukasa is shocked to see the mystic light blade in the bandit's hands and glares at him angrily. The man then mocks him for being careless and prepares to use the stolen weapon. He explains that he took the item using his steal ability right before being thrown away. The steal skill allows him to search for and steal the highest rarity item from an enemy hunter. With that, the bandit prepares to attack but realizes that something is very wrong with the situation. A large shadow looms over him, and the man looks up, terrified of what's to come. The man brags about his stealing ability and prepares to attack with a rare weapon. He says that with his rarity steal skill, he's invincible and can't lose to anyone. Suddenly, the bandit steps on a blue magic circle that appears on the ground right under his feet. A spike trap is activated, and the man looks up, frightened by what's coming. Several spikes emerge and bind him tightly, sealing all his movements and resistance. The stolen dagger falls from his hand, and the bandit screams in pain as he's caught by the vine trap. The binding vine trap mercilessly captures intruders who enter the forest. Our young man then explains that he didn't do anything and just activated a trap that was already there. He reveals that he intentionally threw him near the trap so he would be caught by surprise. Tsukasa explains that with his scan, he can see the location of traps in advance. With the dagger in hand, he says that the bandit isn't the only one who can use stolen abilities. With a wicked smile, he approaches and asks what the bandit thinks of his new weapon. Our hero then points a dagger at the bandit's neck, who is terrified by the scene. He wonders if the man wants to be his test subject, to try out the power of that rare weapon. The bandit begs for his life and says he'll tell him the location of the hidden item if he spares him. Desperate, the man shouts that he knows where to find the ultra-rare item of that specific area. With his eyes shining, the protagonist becomes interested in the proposal and asks where the item is. The young man gets closer and asks if the bandit really knows something so important. The man swears he knows and begs to be released, saying he'll guide him to the exact location. With a suspicious look, our young man asks if he really knows the item's location. He explains that he already used his scan but couldn't find anything special in the area. The young man knows that hidden items are in places protected by traps and that his power can find them. But he also knows that sometimes they exist in remote areas where no one goes and are hard to find. He concludes that this time the item must be in one of those remote areas and glares at the bandit. Suddenly, Jane appears and asks if her master is alright, as she heard battle noises. She explains that she and Mimi couldn't bear to wait and ran to help him in the fight. Our young man turns to Mimi and apologizes for making her worry about the situation. He then explains that the man's true identity is that of a rogue hunter and that he has captured him. Seeing the situation, the knight offers to deliver the final blow and finish the bandit for good. Our hero agrees, but the man interrupts them with a new proposal to save his life. Jane points her sword at the bandit, preparing to deal the final blow. The man looks at her with wide, fearful eyes, begging for his life once more. Desperate, the bandit yells for them to wait and listen to what he has to say first. He swears he saw a clue, the hidden item, and that he can lead them to the exact spot. Our young man and Jean exchange a suspicious glance, but decide to hear what he has to say. The man begins to explain that he was looking for a hunter to ambush and steal their items. While walking through a canyon, he came across something very strange and unexpected. Suddenly, the cliff rock in front of him began to move and shake violently. A huge, tough rock-type monster appeared right in front of him with a threatening air. Our young man interrupts him and asks what that has to do with the area's hidden item. Angrily, the bandit yells that it's obvious, because a tough monster like that has a purpose. He concludes that the creature must be guarding the location of the hidden item and glares at him. The young man thinks the idea is too simplistic, but doesn't dismiss the possibility of it being true. Jane warns him, saying it's dangerous to blindly trust the words of that suspicious man. She explains that the locations of items vary and that sometimes they exist in simple places. But our young man thinks that if Jean is saying it, maybe there's some value in believing him. He then decides he has no choice but to investigate the bandit's story to find out the truth. The protagonist says he's going to get the item and that maybe it will help him find his sister Shiori. With that, he orders the man to guide them to the monster, but warns that he won't release him. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise and turns to see where the sound is coming from. A golden light shines through the trees, and our young man is surprised by what he sees. The S-rank hunter he saw earlier appears and strikes the bandit with a powerful blow. The young man narrowly dodges the attack, and the bandit screams in pain as he's hit squarely. Jane and Mimi run to his side, and the knight asks if her master is okay after the attack. The hunter turns to him and calls him a Kotla, telling him to get away from the bandit. She says she heard that rogue hunters had appeared in the area, and that he must be one of them. Our young man realizes she has mistaken him for a bandit and tries to explain the situation. Suddenly, the other hunters appear and surround Jean, ready to attack her at any moment. Tsukasa yells for them to stop and not to attack, as she's not an enemy like they think. The S-rank hunter doesn't believe him and prepares to attack, her sword drawn. Mimi and Jean stand in front of their master to protect him from the hunter's attacks. The shadow of one of the hunters rises over Mimi, a sword in hand, ready to strike. The man shouts that he will defeat the rogue hunter along with the monsters accompanying him. Our young man yells for Jean to be careful, as they've gotten everything completely wrong. Suddenly, the S-rank hunter charges at him with her sword drawn and glares at him. He creates a wooden shield to defend himself, but her attack shatters it with ease. The young man is pushed back by the force of the blow and cries out in pain from the blade's impact. Jane calls out to him worried, but the hunter doesn't stop her assault and continues to press him. The young woman says the fact that he commands monsters is the ultimate proof that he's evil. He tries to explain that she's fighting the wrong person, but the hunter doesn't listen. Taking advantage of the confusion, the bandit frees himself from the vines and prepares to flee. Seeing this, Jade asks for orders and wonders if she should annihilate all the hunters there. The S-rank hunter is shocked to hear Jean's voice and realizes she can speak. Our young man yells that taking out hunters is forbidden and tells her to grab Mimi and run. The knight understands the order and says she will retreat immediately to protect the little creature. With that, she scoops Mimi into her arms and flees at high speed, leaving the hunters behind. One of them shouts that she's too fast and that they can't catch her at all. The S-rank hunter watches the scene with a serious and focused gaze without moving from her spot. She then turns to Tsukasa and blocks his path with her sword so he can't escape. The young woman tells the others not to worry, as the monster's leader is still there. With a tired look, he just repeats the expression "rogue hunter" without showing any reaction. The hunter praises him for letting his companions escape and staying behind to fight. She says it's now 4 against 1 and that there's no escape for him from this situation. But our young man interrupts her and says not to misunderstand, as he didn't stay behind out of desperation. The girl is confused by his response and stares at him, not understanding what he meant. He then reveals that he stayed to test the power of his new mystic light blade. With a wicked smile, he says that 1 against many is more convenient for testing his weapon. The blade's description appears again, showing that its power and special effect are unknown. He then prepares to fight with all his power and find out what this weapon can do. With the blade in hand, he feels that its true power has yet to be revealed. With a confident smile, he says that now is the time to discover the true power of his rare item. One of the hunters underestimates him and asks what he can do with just a short sword. They then charge at him, yelling for the young man not to underestimate A-rank hunters. Seeing this, the S-rank hunter tries to stop them, saying that advancing recklessly is dangerous. But it's too late, and our young man uses his trap creation ability to defend himself. Several purple magic circles appear around the hunters, who charge forward without noticing anything. The protagonist then decides to make a test cut with his new weapon and prepares to attack. With a shout of "Dance, Mystic Light Blade," he unleashes a powerful attack in their direction. The pinball panic trap is activated, and the hunters are thrown from one side to the other. The hunter is shocked to see that he created traps freely, and that he is no ordinary person. One of the men cries out in pain as he's hit squarely by the mysterious blade's attack. The others also feel their bodies burn and complain about the pain they're feeling after the blow. Suddenly, one of them realizes something is wrong and looks at his arm with a terrified expression. A purple splotch appears on his skin, and he realizes he's been poisoned by the blade's attack. Our young man then notices the weapon has a purple glow and understands what happened. He concludes that the blade inflicts status ailments on whoever it cuts, and that is its power. But he thinks that since it's an ultra-rare item, the effect must be more than just that, and he observes it. Suddenly, the S-rank hunter charges at him with all her speed and power. The young woman shouts that his rampage ends here, and that she won't let him harm her companions. She then throws her sword in his direction to try to disarm him and end the fight. Our hero is surprised by the attack and sees the sword flying uncontrollably toward him. With that, he uses his trap creation ability once more to defend himself. He creates magic threads and attaches them to the blade to control its movements in the air. The marionette movement trap causes objects to move in unexpected trajectories. The hunter is shocked to see her attack failed and realizes she has been poisoned by the blade. But to her surprise, she feels her arm freeze and realizes it wasn't poison but ice. With a smile, he says that the change in the blade's color is a change in the effect it causes. Tsukasa then understands that the dagger can change its attack attributes at will, like poison or ice. The weapon's description is updated, revealing that its special effect is to inflict various status damages. With the blade's true power revealed, he prepares to use it to its full potential. The hunter draws her sword and prepares to use one of her most powerful techniques. With a cry, she says the freeze won't stop her and that from now on, she'll fight for real. The young woman's sword begins to glow with an intense golden energy, ready for the attack. She then uses her secret sword slashing aura dance and unleashes several beams of light. Our young man is shocked by the technique and realizes he can't dodge all the attacks. With his blade, he tries to block the light beams, but their force is too great for him. Suddenly, his weapon is knocked far away by the impact of the hunter's attacks. The young woman continues to attack relentlessly, and the young man is left completely defenseless against her. He reaches his hand toward his weapon, trying to get it back to defend himself. But the hunter is faster and manages to grab the blade before he can with an agile move. With a victorious smile, she says she has secured the evil blade and that it's hers now. The young woman tells him to surrender, as he is now unarmed and at a great disadvantage in the fight. But suddenly, she realizes something is wrong and looks at the weapon in her hand, confused. To her surprise, the blade transforms into a tree branch with a few green leaves. The hunter can't believe what she's seeing and doesn't understand how the weapon transformed into that. At that moment, our young man appears behind her with the real blade in hand, ready to strike. He hits her from behind, and the young woman cries out in pain as she's caught by the surprise blow. The young man then reveals that the sword she grabbed was a copy, and that the real one was with him all along. He advises her to correct her habit of closing her eyes before major techniques. The young woman doesn't give up and says the fight isn't over yet, as she is an S-rank hunter. but she soon realizes she can't get up and falls to her knees on the ground, powerless. Our hero tells her not to push herself as the attack she took inflicts paralysis. The blade then glows with a yellow hue, revealing its paralysis attack mode. He says he won't harm her anymore, and that recovery medicine should heal the damage. The young woman is confused and asks why he is showing mercy when he could finish them off. Our young man explains that he has no intention of harming them, and that he just put an end to a pointless battle. He then approaches and helps her up, asking her to believe him. Tsukasa states that he is not a rogue hunter, and that this was all just a misunderstanding. The hunter finally understands and agrees with him, saying he is absolutely right. With that, the young woman apologizes for the misunderstanding, and the two finally make peace. Suddenly, a loud noise catches their attention, and they turn, startled by the scene. The giant stone monster appears right in front of them with an imposing and threatening air. Our young man is shocked and wonders what that enormous stone creature in front of him is. The hunter then says that it's the area boss, and that there's no doubt about its identity. She shows her high-performance sensor, which is indicating the presence of the boss they were looking for. He then realizes the bandit was telling the truth, and that this is the area boss. Suddenly, the young man sees the rogue hunter who had escaped running away from the monster. The stone creature turns and prepares to attack the fleeing bandit. With a powerful blow, the monster smashes the ground with its stone fist, kicking up dust. The bandit is thrown far away by the impact of the attack and screams in terror at the scene. He falls to the ground powerless and begs for help as the monster slowly approaches. Suddenly, a purple glow appears, and our young man shows up right in front of the rogue hunter. The bandit is surprised to see him there, and the young man glares at him with a serious and intimidating look. With the blade pointed at the man's neck, he asks if he was the one who brought the monster. With a wicked smile, the bandit confirms it and says the monster was in the canyon ahead. He explains that he woke the creature up on purpose so it would cause a huge commotion. The man explains that if he had just run, he would have been pursued, so he decided to buy time to escape. But he says his calculations were a little off, and he ended up being chased by the monster. Our young man gets angry and asks how he could do that, even knowing it was the boss. The young man is shocked by the bandit's audacity and glares at him with a look of pure rage. The stone creature then approaches and prepares to attack them both with all its might. With a swift and brutal blow, the monster attacks, but our young man manages to dodge just in time. Seeing the situation, the S-rank hunter yells for everyone to fall back, as they can't fight right now. One of the hunters screams in terror, saying that the situation is really bad for them at the moment. The young woman realizes the creature is now targeting them and prepares for the confrontation. But our hero uses his ability and throws a basin of water on the monster's head to provoke it. He then teleports in front of the creature and faces it with a defiant look. With that, the young man yells at the monster and says that he is its opponent from now on. The hunter is confused by his attitude and wonders who he is and what he's doing. From a distance, the other hunters watch the scene, not understanding our young hero's plan. With that, the stone monster turns and faces our young man, its red eyes glowing. The young man then starts running, yells for the creature to follow him away from the other hunters. He thinks that the injured hunters need time to recover, and that he needs to separate them from the boss. With that, he lures the monster away in search of an easier place to fight it. Meanwhile, Mimi arrives at the edge of a river, and seems to be looking for something. Jane watches her and asks the little creature not to let her guard down, as there might be enemies. The knight says that although the place seems calm, there could be hidden dangers nearby. She then remembers hearing a loud sound of crumbling rocks and stays on high alert. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and several rocks start to fall from the cliff beside them. Our young man appears at the top of the cliff along with the giant stone monster that's chasing him. Jane and Mimi look up, shocked to see their master bringing the area boss over to them. He sees them and shouts Jean's name, surprised that they are in that exact spot. Tsukasa then tells them to get ready for battle, because they are going to defeat the area boss. With a determined cry, he informs his allies that the great battle is about to begin. He then turns to the monster and says that combat is inevitable since he has been targeted. With a sweaty face, he thinks that somehow they need to break through that tough body. Suddenly, a golden light catches his attention, and he turns to see what's happening. The S-rank hunter appears and uses her secret sword technique once again with full force. Her attack hits the stone monster squarely, but doesn't seem to cause any damage to the creature. The other hunters appear, and the young woman says she managed to catch up to him and that they will fight together. With a confident smile, our young man faces them and gets ready for the team battle. She explains that thanks to him, they had time to recover and are now in perfect condition. The young man is confused and asks how she knows his name, and the young woman shows him her device. She reveals his identity and says the rumor that he defeated a boss all by himself has already spread. With a smile, the hunter apologizes for not recognizing him earlier and introduces herself again. But one of the hunters interrupts her and points to the monster, which is moving again. He says the boss's defense is too strong and that not even her technique caused any damage. The young woman then turns to Tsukasa and asks if he has any strategy to defeat them. She turns to Tsukasa and asks if he has any strategy to defeat this enemy. He then approaches and tells her to attack the monster with her strongest technique, non-stop. The hunter says that someone as excellent as him must be able to come up with a plan quickly. She then gets closer and asks him to lend them his wisdom, so they can win the fight. Our young man is shocked by her confidence and wonders if she's being serious about this. He thinks she is either an incredibly naive person or has some other reason to trust him. But the young man decides that now that he's gained fighting power, he needs to think of a way to win. He then remembers the inscription he saw at the amusement park and suddenly has a great idea. With a serious look, he asks if they are willing to risk their lives and fight as he commands. The hunter smiles and nods in agreement, ready to follow any plan he has. The other hunters also agree, saying there's nothing else to do and that they'll go all out against the boss. With everyone in agreement, our young man prepares to put his plan into action with their help. He then says that altogether, they will set a trap to shatter that enemy to pieces.